evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Lots to get into. Baseball facing a deadline. Will they make it or not tomorrow? We're going to find out. We'll talk about that. Also, we have the NFL Combine beginning this week, and we're entering into a very busy off season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Penguins, who get another big 2 points today. That's 4 on a weekend after they blew a game at home against the Devils. Actually didn't really show up from the beginning and cost themselves 2 points. Here's to talk about that is your panel tonight. We have with us Jeff Hathhorn at the top of your screen, who does everything for 93.7 The Fan, the sports director there. Below him, it's Paul Zeise, outstanding columnist with the Post-Gazette and, of course, host of the Paul Zeise program on The Fan. And across from him, it's Will Graves, outstanding journalist with the Associated Press. So, Will, I'm going to start with you on this one, and that is the Penguins coming away with 4 points. It's good to do after they laid an egg against the Devils. But my question for you would be, they're getting their goals from a lot of the usual suspects. How concerned are you that the Penguins won't have enough, quote, secondary scoring or anyone else helping out the big Lions?
I'm very concerned. I mean, if you go over the last 5 games, I think they've led for a total of 17 minutes of game time, which is not really something that you want to do. And like yesterday, Gino gets the big goal. Today, Sid gets the one. Gino and Sid scored, late to give them the win. I mean, look, Kasperi Kapanen, the guy's been missing for months. Evan Rodriguez has fallen off a cliff. I mean, I know he got a big goal, recently, but he's not nearly at the pace that he was. But he's also not being asked to do what he was doing the first half of the season when everybody was hurt. I think that's probably a factor there. But, you can't rely strictly on the power play and hope your goaltending is good enough. I mean, they've got to have, they got to have production from the third line. They've got to have production. Denton Heinen looks like he's got something going with Gino, but he's not necessarily finding the back of the net yet. So, yeah, I think they need these other guys to step up because, this is not – I mean, those Cup teams were built on supplemental scoring, and right now the Pens don't have it.
Well, and I think that the big thing there is once the playoffs start, we've seen this show way too many times, teams are able to take away your stars a little bit. And I think the other thing is the referees don't call enough penalties to really rely on power play goals. And so this has sort of been one of the they've had a few Achilles heels over the last few years in the playoffs, but this has been one of them, is that you take away, teams take away the scoring that you're usually going to get from a guy like Crosby and a guy like Malkin, and they basically say the rest of your team has to figure it out, and they can't. And then when you don't get power plays because, you might get 5 power plays in an entire playoff series, you're not going to get those kind of goals. And that's been the problem with the Penguins. I mean, there's been some other things that have gone on with them, but they have got to do a better job of finding other guys, especially on their third and fourth lines that are going to, step up and score. I think the other thing is, at least yesterday they got a big win over the Rangers. That was a game that they needed to win because if nothing else, they've got to finish second so they can at least get that first playoff series at home. And I think that's, those are the kind of games you have to win. Tonight they kind of slopped their way through 2 periods, but they found a way, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the 2 wins. I mean, you get a win over the Rangers at home, as Paul mentioned, a good young team in your building. You're able to find a way to get a victory. And, hey, Columbus is playing as good as anybody in the NHL over the last 15 or so games. So that's not a bad road win to go in there, to be down, and find a way to come back and get a win. But I agree with the secondary scoring. My hope would be that these 2 power play goals will get Evgeny Malkin revving. We'll find some way to get his game going. Maybe something will click. If he starts getting hot, that you can't cover every line. That is going to open up some opportunities, even more opportunities for that third line, and maybe even lessen a little bit on that top line. So I think a hot Malkin can help with those situations. But, yeah, I mean, I agree to the sense that you have to get more scoring. But, man, in the postseason, you get a couple of hot players. You can ride them for a while.
The general consensus is, and I think it's an accurate one, that this window around here is still open. They're a good hockey club, and they still rely on the guys they've relied on, top-end guys who've been around here through these cup runs. But, Will, this is a different general manager. It's Ron Hextall. It's not Jim Rutherford. Normally, when the window is open, Rutherford would try to go through it and do whatever he could to help them. They don't have a lot of things to trade. They have a #1 pick. How far should Ron Hextall go here in terms of helping this team move down the stretch into the playoffs? Because teams like Carolina, the Rangers, others are going to make deals. What should they do, and how can he solve those issues?
Well, I mean, I think, look, we have to be a little concerned about the goaltending depth. I mean, Casey DeSmith was okay today. I mean, Tristan Jarry's played great. But, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, these Penguin seasons, I mean, it's the blessing and the curse of being here, right? Because they make the playoffs every year. The only thing that people are going to remember is the playoffs. And we're not going to remember that Sully did an incredible job keeping this team together the first 45 games of the season when everybody was hurt, everybody was out, everybody had COVID. They're not going to remember that Tristan Jarry was an all-star for the second season. All they're going to remember is what happens in May and maybe June, okay? So as far as what they have, I mean, look, the feeling you get is that they don't want to trade their first-round pick because they haven't had one. I mean, they haven't had one since 2019, and there has to be somebody around in the post-Sid and Gino era. So I think Hextall is trying to walk the line here. You know, P.O. Joseph appears to be available. I mean, I like that kid. Do I like him enough to maybe not have another cup run because you're not willing to part with him? No. But Friedman's played well enough that maybe you can sort of, you don't need P.O. Joseph, maybe semi-long term, but I don't know, Pomp. I mean, I think Hextall's sort of going to try to do both things because I think he wants to have a job after Sid and Gino are gone too, right? I mean, he does either, so he's sort of trying to walk that line. And they're up against the cap too. I mean, because they always are. So he's a little bit inflexible, and who's going to take Kasperi Kapanen? I mean, I don't know if the Wheeling Nailers would take Kasperi Kapanen at the moment. Okay, so look, they need goaltending depth. Maybe they need some blue line depth. It'd be nice to get a guy that can score goals. What about David Perron? I mean, that's a guy whose contract is up. His numbers are sort of similar to Kapanen's. He had a great start, has sort of fallen off a cliff. As a guy who has a track record here. That's just a name, I'm saying that's a name that fits. I'm not saying that he's the guy, but I'm saying if that's what I'm the Pens, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear if you read what, between the lines that Ron Hextall's not going to make any big moves. He's not going to go out and trade. I'll be shocked if he trades picks. I'll be shocked if he trades prospects or younger players. I think for the most part, he's going to be very, very conservative. For two reasons. One, I don't know that the Penguins have a ton to trade, and I don't know that they have enough room under the cap to make any significant moves. And for two, that's his nature. That's been his MO as a general manager, which maybe it's why he's really good at building teams, not so good at getting them over the top. But I think that if people think there's going to be some huge moves made at the trade deadline, I'll be very, very shocked. I think they might go out and get some, low-level third, fourth liner type that they think they might be able to hit lightning in a bottle with some scoring with, and maybe they go get a backup goalie. But again, I don't know how much you're going to upgrade over Casey DeSmith if you're not really willing to trade much away of anything. So to me, I think what they have and what we're looking at is pretty much probably what we're going to see for the rest of the year. And I just don't think they're good enough to win a Stanley Cup as built right now, but I don't know that they can do a lot about it.
All right, Jeff, 30 seconds.
All right, well, I'm typing in Will Graves predicts David Perron to Penguins. Thanks, Will. It's breaking news, by the way, on the fan website. Hey, I think this. I don't care if you trade away everybody and you have the Wheeling Nailers as your team in 3 years. I don't care. If you have a deal and you can trade that first-round pick to get a big guy in front of the net, if you could get maybe another depth defenseman or a backup goalie, I'd make that deal.
All right, we have a lot to talk about. I got to go to a break
I know.
here, guys.
All right, I'm going to say the
do when I come back. I'm going to ask you about
you.
guys who you would protect, guys who you would make available. That's coming up when we continue with the Penguin conversation. Penguins winners of 2 in a row. They got a tough week this week. They're going to go to Florida. They got to go to Tampa. We'll talk about what they have to do at the trade deadline next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.
#1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran. Go one better.